quite sure what the objectives are, but I'm sure that he will tell us. Please welcome Ray Stryler.
Let's see if I can move this out of the way here. So, my friend wrote this in his diary before he passed away. Sergeant Chuck Arona, June 13th, 1966. I woke in an alien world. One moment I was asleep peacefully, the next moment I thrust into the most hideous cacophony of sound ever. I was certain it was the end of the world. I realized what I was hearing was gunfire, and I was in the middle of it. My first thought was to defend myself, as I was certain we were being overrun by the enemy. To this day, I have the most vivid recollection of a pine tree 20 feet from me toppling over when an RPG hit the base of it and snapped it off. I was scared to death, but I had to overcome my fear to continue. I looked at my commander who had combat experience, and I was amazed to see how calmly he was talking to the commanders on the radio. He was calm, cool, collected. How could anybody be that calm and cool with facing impending doom? This was my first exposure to combat, and it was a true rite of passage. I learned how quickly adrenaline shot through the body. I learned how quickly fear racked all of the bones. I had to control my fear to survive and save lives. The biggest struggle was to overcome the battle within me, to conquer my fear. Madam Toastmaster, ladies and gentlemen, honored guests. So the way to overcome fear is simple. Use emotional intelligence. Some people refer to it as EQ in comparison with IQ. But emotional intelligence is what you need, and you need to improve it. Everybody has a smattering of it. Some people have a lot more of it. Some people you can tell they have a lot of emotional intelligence. But what is it? What is emotional intelligence? It's nothing more than identifying in your brain the emotion, number one. Number two, managing that emotion. And then doing something about it, making a decision. All this happens in a micromillisecond in the brain. So, what kind of emotions are there? Well, the Bible says there are two. There's fear and there's love. But the psychiatrists say they break it down into four. There are many more after that, but the four basic emotions are sadness, happiness, fearful, and anger. So, with those four emotions, how do they operate? They come into the brain, basically into the action part of the brain, the amygdala, and up until that time you have no control over it. In fact, your body takes control then and expresses what that emotion is. You may not realize it, but as soon as that hits your amygdala, you express what that emotion is. Your eyes might dilate just a little bit, might flush your face a little bit, you might twitch a little bit, turn your head, but you have no control over that. Your body takes charge of that. That's been built into us for millions of years. But then it goes up to the thinking part of the brain, and it becomes a feeling. And once you have a feeling, then you manage it, deal with it, work with it, and then have a behavior based upon that feeling. Now, Sergeant Arona, he didn't know what he was talking about, but he was talking about emotional intelligence. Now, this is in 1966, and people didn't really start talking about emotional intelligence until 1990, when Daniel Goleman wrote the wonderful book, Emotional Intelligence. And from then on, we've been more understanding of it, we've practiced it, and we find out that if you take a test and you compare one with high emotional intelligence, chances are those are people going to be up at the top 20% of leadership. So emotional intelligence is a way of conquering your fear. Now, to wrap this thing up, I need to read the last part of this missive. It said, P.S. My commander was Raymond Joseph Strider. Thank you.